You look at me. Do you see another brother lost in these streets looking for his soul?
Trying to find my soul.
Or do you see another brother searching for lost souls in these streets? A street soldier.
Street soldier.
Here to help you get that chip off your shoulder, warm your colder days and sober your drunken ways, and find a way to help you get over these hurdles placed in our path. And this is not meant to amuse you. This is for all those who have questions but are afraid to ask.
I won't be afraid. I won't be afraid. No. When times get hard, you lose your way. Open your mind and hear what I say.
This is a message for the hard and the soft. To those who tune in weekly and to those who keep an eye out for 8 p.m. on Sundays and turn their radios off. The truth hurts. The cloth has been pulled. We're walking around half dead. Use this show as your IV. Alive and Free is a new movement. We've achieved self-destruction. A street soldier promotes self-improvement.
Streets couldn't be no colder, so I gotta be a soldier. It shouldn't be this hard for me. Even when it seems so hopeless, I gotta keep my focus. I'm glad to be alive and free, yeah. Streets couldn't be no colder, so I gotta be a soldier. It shouldn't be this hard for me. Even when it seems so hopeless, I gotta keep my focus. I'm glad to be alive and free, yeah.
Hey there, street soldiers. This is Lady Estelle and the Street Soldier crew, well, part of it. And we're back another Sunday night to spend with you. Your host this evening is glad to see that we are still here, healthy, safe, alive, and free. That's Dr. Joseph E. Marshall Jr.
Good evening, everyone. Alive and Free Street Soldiers Radio. We're on Zoom as we have been for a while now. You know, we might be in the studio soon. I don't know. I know a little birdie said that he's going to be in the studio, so maybe we'll be in the studio soon. But for now, we're doing the show on Zoom. It's been great. And we got just a very, 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 very important show for you tonight. The police. All things policing, what can be done, what should be done. We got 4 wonderful guests who are going to talk about this. I mean, hey, what more important topic is there than police and policing? So we'll do that at the bottom of the half hour, as we always do. But as we always do, that's not really want to say. I'm going to get into some conversation a little bit. News of the week. I am Dr. Joseph E. Marshall Jr. Oh, there's a soul. All right. All things alive and free, Street Soldiers and Omega Boys Club, co-host of the radio program, Street Soldiers. Uh-oh.
Bless you, lady.
Okay, that's quite an intro. And I am Lady Estelle with a little bit of something going on with her nose. Oh my goodness.
Something. All right. We'll know in a minute if it's a one-time thing or not. Uh-oh, there she goes. She had to go off camera. Oh, Ann, you want to say hello?
That was the cutest little sneeze, Mrs. Estelle. Anyways, good evening, everyone. Yes, this is Ann Bissett saying hello.
Where are you in Hawaii? You in Hawaii, bro?
Like Snoop Dogg says, I'm living the fine life. Okay? Yeah. No, I'm at home, but you know.
The breeze is blowing, it's nice.
You know, my hair is blowing and everything.
Well, if you get up and start walking and passing people with a few bottles, then I know you are the stand-in.
Lady, what do you have? Pearls around? What is that going on?
Yeah, I've got my pearl filter on today.
I like that.
Thank you.
Speaking of Snoop Dogg, since you mentioned it, it is just fascinating how he has become the number one, or as much as anybody, pitch man for, he and Shaq are pitching everything, and also with Snoop, he's doing game shows like crazy. So from Calvin Broadus.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
I actually know your real name, bro, and some of us do. You've come a long way.
He's everywhere. He's everywhere. John Legend too is everywhere. Every time I look, I hear his voice. He's on every commercial. yeah, it's great to see people get work. It's always a little strange to me how someone is everywhere. Like there's not more people, but
Right.
you know,
Can
it's
you
like
get
they just
anybody else?
they find one and just ride it, but yeah, hey, get the money, I guess, while you can.
Hey, they getting the money.
Yeah,
They getting the money. They're getting the money. And I know I said it, but let me say also, Shaq is doing pizza. Shaq is doing the general.
The general.
And it does 50 general commercials a day, and he's everywhere. Of course, he's on TNT. He's like, that's a big boy too. And Shaq is funny. Shaq has no shame. Shaq will take off Shaq took off his shoes one time and his socks and showed those gnarled. He'll do anything. He'll strip down to his boxers. I mean, Shaq.
I mean, y'all know I'm crazy. Y'all know I'm crazy, but I'm not showing my toes on Street Soldier. Okay, I'm just let you know right now. There is a line that I will not cross.
Hey,
nope.
But we ain't giving you no money, so Shaq probably gets a whole lot of money to do that. Him and Barkley are just ridiculous. Anyway, all right, let's get into it. Easily the biggest news of the week, and I think this is probably the biggest news of the week. My thing is. War is looming in the Middle East, folks.
Again.
I mean, looming? There's bombs happening right now. I don't know if I guess, yeah, it could looming.
Well,
but
not full scale.
Not full scale, but there's bombs. There's rockets happening as we speak.
Yep.
And the images we're starting to see them. I can't go on Instagram without seeing them. When you see buildings coming down and bombs and rockets, okay. This is bad right now.
How many missiles did they shoot? It was like 2,900 missiles fired at Israel. Yeah.
That's what CNN is reporting, 100 rockets today. But it's been about a week now, Doc?
Yeah. I don't even know what got this latest round, of
it's terrible.
There was I saw a New York Times article earlier that was referencing something that happened last month. A police action in Jerusalem was one of the several incidents that led to the current crisis. But that this crisis has been going on, for so long. That might be something that sparked it. I don't know.
It goes on and on and on and on. It just goes in remission, right? It'll calm down for a while, and you think you got maybe some semblance of, hopefully some kind of lasting. Well, and then something's. It's just.
It's a matter of time.
CNN's reporting 2 Israeli airstrikes in Gaza killed 43 Palestinians, including 8 children. Injuring 50 others. And like I said, when you see you start seeing the images, it's.
There's so much going on. I mean, COVID's doing enough. Do you really need to send a missile to?
Obviously
I couldn't even stand to listen to it.
Mm-hmm. Look, we're alive and free people, right? That's us. Our mission is a world without violence and a world without incarceration. We're alive and free. Figure out a better way. They just cannot figure out, and people gonna die, and that don't sit with us. Period. The whole basis of our organization is the opposite of this, and it just can't figure it out. It's and everybody has their reasons, and this is just horrible. I mean,
it is.
Oh man. Okay. Here we go again. Okay, that was my lead thing, which is not a nice lead thing. So
that has to be the lead thing. That's got everyone on the planet's attention right now. Yeah. There was, if come back domestic, here in the United States, Doc, I know you saw this one story that caught my attention is about I think her name is Representative Liz Cheney.
Yes.
Yeah. I guess I saw something today. She said she regrets voting for Donald Trump. And I know that's not the whole story. If you earlier in the week that you can say,
I gotta, I'm taking party completely. The politics is out. I'm giving her a lot of love just for saying, dude is lying. Period. He lying. I ain't for my homie, right or wrong. You know, that's how you do it when it comes to that stuff. I ain't for the party. This ain't a party thing. This is a democracy thing. And so, hey, you know, I'm saying it no matter what. It's the truth. And, you know, she lost her I guess her committee assignment. And they gave it to somebody who is down for their homie, right or wrong. I mean, you know, I was telling Lady Stell, the next training we do, I don't even have to talk about the boys in the hood. I just talk about the boys in the congressional hood. You know, I mean, it's just crazy. It ain't even about right. It ain't even about the truth. It's like, you know, you with us or not. I mean, I might as well just go over to the gang members. It's just, but she's like, no, you know, you vote me out, fine, cool, whatever. You know, this ain't right. You know, this dude is messing with our democracy, which you figured they would stand for. Nope. They want to, we gonna win and we need you to win. We ain't rebutting the lie. I mean, it's just, you figure people would stoop this low, but they done just gone way down. And they were, you know, it's go ahead, Liz. Go ahead, Liz, period. That's what I got to say about her. Yeah.
I think she was on ABC News this morning or this week.
Yeah.
You know, and they asked her, what does it say that so many GOP members are able to erase the memory of what happened on January 6th at the Capitol? She says it's indefensible and that she won't be part of whitewashing. Nice word choice. What happened?
It ain't about party. It's about this grand experiment they put together. What, in 1776? And like, don't y'all see that? And to her, you know, she's a Republican and says this don't represent what I think are true Republican values. But, you know, the cult moves on. It's just, but the cult is based on a lie. That's what's so bad about it. Sometimes I can't even, like, y'all really going along with this? But then I think, hey, it's all about power, domination, and control. And my latest line,
by any means necessary.
I hate to let my boy.
Whatever it takes, I'm gonna do it. Lie, cheat, steal in front of everybody, and somebody's gonna go along with it. And that's what's just so unbelievably reprehensible to me. You know it's a lie, and you say okay.
Yeah, because you want the power.
Lady Estelle, going back to our first story, I just looked online. There's a picture of a 10-month-old baby being pulled from the rubble. A family of 10 was killed in an airstrike in Gaza. And
yeah, I can't. You know, I mean, like I said, I heard it on the news and then I turned it off. I was like, I can't. You know, sometimes there's only so much your heart can take. For me.
I remember talking to this blood in Los Angeles one time. See, when your head is like that, you into that diseased mindset of, you know, that infected mindset. I remember he was telling me, I'll never forget this brother. I don't know if I guess he was serious, but you know, I don't know what it was. He's like, man, we need to have our war. We need to have a war, man. I said, man, you got grandparents living here. You got parents and grandparents living here. Well, we need to move them out so we can have our war. I said, and I was sitting in a place where, you know, the mother or the grandmother of one of the gang members, there were bullet holes in the house and the piano was there, had bullet holes in it, right? And I'm saying, man, you're going to get people killed. He said, man, you in a war, there are casualties. That's exactly what they're doing over there. You know, in a war, there are casualties. No, I'm just really sorry that this 10-year-old got killed. That's why, you know, what Marvin Gaye said, war is hell. When will it end? Will people ever, you know, that's why that song, that album in particular is so powerful because people just don't get it. They just don't get it. Okay. The CDC has said that vaccinated people can now remove masks inside, outside, and all around the town. And look at his face.
It's going to be interesting. What, I guess June 15th is the day in
Like,
California.
I don't care what the CDC says.
I just
I mean,
like to be cautious. That's
Why
all.
would you give up the mask altogether? That don't make sense to me. I mean,
Well,
I
they
get
said
it,
when you go in the store, no, they didn't say, well, they're saying, look, in the stores, you got to wear it. You go in a place. But they're saying when you're outside, if you're fully vaccinated, you can be around fully vaccinated people. And now, this is the latest guideline that's going, and non-vaccinated people. So, you know, you can actually walk on the street now without a mask. I'm just telling you what they said. I mean, you ain't got to do it. I'm just saying, if, you know, these are the latest guidelines put out by the Center for Disease Control. And those of you who like, I don't care what they say, I'm wearing, you get every right to do that, you know.
It's going to be interesting because we're not going back to normal. I don't believe that, you know, or it's a new normal. I don't think everyone's just going to give up the mask. I know I'm not. Why would I? I didn't get sick the last year, so it worked. Not only did I not get COVID, I didn't get sick, and I get sick all the time. So the mask is my friend. I'm sure some people are going to flush theirs down the toilet, you know, because they're just tired of it. And there's still reports of people who even are vaccinated who are still coming down with COVID.
Right.
Yeah.
I think most famously TV show host Bill Maher came down with COVID. So, I mean.
Really?
And again, this is here. There's parts in other parts of the world, COVID is
Rampant.
You know, so India for one, where I talked to
India's still getting hit hard, right?
a friend of mine, her father is in ICU in India with COVID right now. So yeah, I guess it's good news. You know, a lot of people are vaccinated and the mask mandate is coming down, but we'll see.
I'm still wearing mine. My son got his first shot. My daughter got her first shot. So yeah. And yeah, I will wear mine. And then when I take it off, I keep my distance. But yes.
I mean, hey, I like to go sit at the bar and have a little, you know, whiskey neat more than anybody, you know. That was my thing. Late night, after work, or I'm just sit down, have a drink, look at people, talk to people. I love being social, but it's gonna be hard.
And I'm getting requests about watching the show or hearing the show or everything. And so I want to make sure I get this right. People can watch it on Facebook.com/Stay Alive and Free. Is that right?
Yep, on our page.
That is right. And you know who's watching right now? Stefan. Thank you for tuning in with your grandkids. We hear you, we see you, and we want to say hello.
Yeah, folks are like, how can I see this? You know, because some people still think it's still, you know, on the radio and get an iHeart. No, you got to do this. Got to go on Facebook until we get back in the studio. So I just let's let him know.
Hey, do y'all get this? You know, you be out in the store or you just be out in the world somewhere. Somebody's like, hey, what's up? What's up? And then they go to shake your hand, you know, and you don't know them. And or they try to give you dap. And, you know, your instinct, and then you kind of just free. You be like, what's up, brother? How you doing? You know, like, I'm not ready to go that far just yet. Sorry.
Yeah, especially because, like, you know, they passed the vaccinations for the 12-year-olds to 15-year-olds, which is kind of interesting, right? Like, that's a big deal. But the children, like, younger than that, still don't have it. So there's still this chance of, like, passing it along. So I just, you know, it's okay to you have to, like, have that talk with yourself, right? Like, what are my boundaries? What am I comfortable with? And just be okay with it. You don't need to argue it. You just state it and be like, that's that, because you're not alone. Whether you want to wear a mask and do all the stuff, you know, like go to concerts and things like that. I'm not ready, you know, like that's too much. But going to the park without a mask, I think that's okay. But like Dolores Park, going to the park without a mask, that's a little too crowded. So I don't know.
It has always been an individual decision to vaccine, to vaccinate, to not vaccinate, to wear the mask, not wear the mask. I've just said That's what the CDC said. That's all I'm saying.
Well, I will say some good news. As you know, we're opening up a little bit more here in the Bay Area. Oh, live music is back, and that does make me happy. I saw a lot of bands playing in restaurants, playing outside over the weekend. When I actually heard some really good blues playing at Tina's place in Pinole, and it's just good to see the live musicians back playing. That did feel good. You know, it's nothing like hearing live music.
Yes, you're right.
Yoshi's had something going on,
especially since you're a musician. Yes.
No, but I mean, as not playing, just
no, I know
listening.
it. I'm
you
saying.
know, I mean, it's just everybody loves live music. It's just a special thing. So, and yeah, for the musicians getting to work again, it's good to see.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, you guys got anything else?
Yeah,
I know your favorite topic. I can't believe you didn't bring it up, but we got to mention it real quick.
What?
NBA playoff time is here.
Oh Lord! So all right,
when we're gonna get to
Warriors
the basketball
versus
stuff.
Tuesday night play-in game. I think it's in Los Angeles. Look, it's on. It's on.
It's the playoffs. It's time. So we know what you're gonna be doing the next few months.
Look, Steph hit 3 bombs from let's see, from Pinole.
Mm-hmm. He was at Tina's place in Pinole.
Win the game today. He like, and then did you see his? It wasn't a shimmy. He pulled his shirt up. I mean, Steph was like ecstatic.
When you shoot like that, you can do whatever you want.
Oh, you're right.
That's a bad boy.
You're right. Right. Yep. It's on. It's on. Okay, let me just, you got me hyped. Let me calm down, get my basketball out, and because it's a serious show, and so, yeah. And what you got for us during the interlude? You got anything for us? Because we're gonna get into it, get these folks in.
Well, it's not what I have, it's what the Richmond Pulse has. So they have a new story up, and we're gonna take you on over. So here we go.
Oh, hey, this one's nice.
Right now we started renting, but these are stepping stones right here. This is, Chef Smelly got to me. He got in my DM. He's like, right now you want a stepping stone, man. Make sure you get as much as you can out of that. This was gonna build us.
If you haven't tried Sinaloense style ceviche made by Dario Martinez León, owner of Mariscos de Layo, you should. León, known as Layo, started selling from his home in 2018. He grew a successful home kitchen with a strong social media presence, but eventually got shut down by the county health department. After paying fees and going through the county's guidelines to become legit, he now operates a small kitchen he rents inside Family Market in Delhi at 7th Street and Pennsylvania Avenue. Layo talked with the Richmond Post about his culinary journey and showed off some plates from his menu.
Tell me about those early days of you cooking and selling. What was that thing that, kept you going?
My son. So I got my son, right? I wasn't doing too good before Mariscos de Layo.
Months before he began selling ceviche, Layo was arrested for having a concealed gun that was loaded and modified with an extended magazine in the back seat of his car. Police found it after searching his car after pulling him over for driving without registration, insurance, or a license. Fortunately, he had no criminal record, and the judge cleared him in a week. León walked out of jail after 7 days, a changed man.
Sitting in that cell, I thought about what am I gonna really do. So that's where Mariscos de Layo was really born, inside of a cell. I was like, I ain't coming back over here no more. So I really gotta change my life. I got out of jail. I didn't even have a bike, so I was walking to Foodsco, grabbing my stuff, pepinos, tomates. I was grabbing everything I needed to make my food and walking home with it and preparing it and selling little by little, until my name came out. And then I had a bike, used the bike. Got a couple months later, I got a car selling ceviche.
For the Richmond Pulse, this is Dennis Perez Bravo.
All right, man. All right. So that's nice, man. Nice.
Oh, I love to hear that. You know, love to hear about young brothers doing what we call the legal hustle. Because we gonna have to figure out something. We live in the Bay Area; it's too expensive out here. But as you always say, Dad, you can't take penitentiary chances with your kids. Just can't do it. So it's great to hear about the young man getting his hustle on. The food looks great, and I love me some ceviche, so I'll be out there this week to support Mr. Leon.
And I love me some cheese, man. So that quesadilla I was just eating it right through the screen here.
Yeah. Keep it up, young man. Keep it up. Keep working hard.
Hey, you're part of the solution now, I'm part of the problem, man. Great story, man. Great story. Absolutely. All right. Okay, let's get into this. I believe our guests have arrived. They will pop on camera in a moment. And tonight's show, everybody, and people have been anticipating the show because we started the publicity early last week, is on police and policing. What can we do? What do we do? And hey, we're gonna try. We're gonna talk, and we're gonna see how it goes and what we come up. We got about an hour and a half to do this, and we're gonna solve as many problems in the world of policing as we can. But the folks that are with us are just wonderful people. Thank you, and they know their business. Okay, so let me introduce them one at a time. So we have two police chiefs here, one from the city of San Francisco, one from the city of Oakland. We have Chief LeRonne Armstrong. Say hello, Chief. Unmute yourself and say hi. Thank you.
Hello, good evening, and happy to be here, Dr. Marshall.
Thank you, brother. Thank you. We have Chief of Police William Bill Scott from the city of San Francisco. There he is. What's up, Chief?
Hey, Dr. Marshall, how you doing?
Thank you, Chief. And then we have two civilian commissioners. We have the chair of the Oakland Police Commission, Miss Regina Jackson.
Hey, Dr. Marshall, how you doing?
I'm good, Regina, thank you. And the commissioner, DJ.
Okay, you walk past?
I call him DJ Brookter. Dion J, but DJ Brookter from the San Francisco Police Commission. Thanks, DJ.
Thank you, Dr. Marshall, man. It's a pleasure to be here with these established and esteemed folks.
And, this is obviously an ongoing thing. We're going to jump into it where we are right now. And I know these are people I know, three of them I know very, very well. Chief Scott, I know because I was on the police commission for 14 years in the city and actually was one of the people that hired him. So I see his resume before he even came. DJ, well, I know DJ, yeah, DJ, I know DJ. Yeah, okay, he's my frat brother, but we'll just let it go. And you my frat brother too, Chief Scott, okay? Miss Jackson, I have known for about 25 years, long time. And I remember the day she got on the commission, been doing a wonderful job. And I would just say for DJ, myself, and Regina, we're all community people who happen to end up on the commission. Regina is the president and CEO of East Oakland Youth Development Center. DJ is the executive director of Young Community Developers. So all of us brought I think a much needed and unique perspective to our respective commissions. And Chief Armstrong, you're the only one I really don't know. So, I want to say that, but I'm familiar with Oakland a little bit because when Chief Word was there, we did several trainings with OPD back to back. It was fascinating. Let me just put it like that. But you are the latest chief. How long you been chief there now, Chief Armstrong?
It's been a little over 3 months now.
Okay, so you're just getting broken in, but you've been on the force there for how long?
22 years.
Oh, well, okay.
Just a little bit.
I gotta ask, did you really want the job?
I really did. I thought it was the right moment for me.
Okay. So here's how we're going to do this. We're going to take it in sections. Probably got a lot of people watching. A lot of people, probably going to ask questions. But I thought what we might do is talk about locally how things are going for you, your successes and your challenges in your respective cities. We'll do that. And then we'll go to the larger issues of policing. I got notes on top of notes, on top of notes, on top of notes. And let's start like that. I know one of the statements I always made when I was on the commission, and I said this many times, is that I didn't have a problem with police, but I definitely had a problem with misconduct. And this misconduct, which has led us to where we are. You wouldn't believe this. I started when I knew the show was coming up, I started just putting headlines down about all the things that were going on. I mean, from George Floyd to, I didn't read them all. But the thing that caught my eye more than anything was this headline I saw last week, which says, UN urged to create commission to probe US police violence. Leading human rights organizations and relatives of victims urged the United States on Monday to create a commission to conduct an independent inquiry into police violence against African Americans in the United States. I said, whoa. And that reminded me of, since his birthday is this week, I'm old enough to remember when Malcolm X went to the UN and said, it's not a problem of civil rights, it's a problem of human rights. So that just stood out to me with all this going on, how important people feel that how policing in this country is going, and particularly when it comes to Black Americans. So let's start with Oakland. Chief Armstrong, Chair Jackson. Talk about your successes and the challenges that you feel you still got to face in Oakland. So Chief, you and Regina, you guys can jump in. Go ahead.
Let Chair Jackson go
22
first.
years on me. There you go. Go ahead.
No, I think, Dr. Marshall, I think, Oakland is not unique to any city across the country. I mean, I think, the issues that plague law enforcement across the country, I think, go to the history that the Oakland Police Department has had too. And so we, fortunately have been able to re-examine our practices for many years and have been constantly trying to improve. And so I think, this is a moment for all of us to look at the way in which we police communities, particularly minority communities. And so I think we have begun to make some of the changes that I think communities would like to see, invested in training, really emphasizing de-escalation, right? Retraining officers to focus on trying to resolve incidents with minimal use of force. But also the acceptance of civilian oversight. I think, some departments have been resistant. I think, initially, there's always some apprehension about when the community comes in and they play a role in decision-making in the department. But, I found it to be very useful. We've developed policies together. We're able to have discussions, and we're actually able to hear the voices of community. There's some level of transparency that exists now in the city of Oakland that didn't exist before, where people can have input in the process. And I think that's the beginning. I say it to my staff all the time that we have a huge hill to climb when it comes to building trust. But this is the moment to invest in it. And so we have underinvested in making relationships with communities. And so in Oakland, we have to overinvest in building relationships. And that means we got to get out the building, get out the cars, and get to meet people, spend time letting people humanize us as we begin to humanize community. And so I think it's a call for change. And I think we're starting in Oakland.
I know it's tough for you. Just been there 3 months. You haven't had a chance to make a lot of changes, and so there is a history. The rioters and all of that. It was under a federal oversight, so you stepped into it, and sounds like you're up to the challenge. Regina, how do things look for you? Challenges, and then if you got successes, please talk about them.
Absolutely. And again, thank you for even having this conversation. For those that don't know, I was following in Dr. Marshall's lead by running a youth development organization and then deciding to expand my reach, trying to protect families and joining the police commission. You know, because of the history in Oakland, even though an overwhelming majority of citizens voted for Measure LL, which created us, the city structures, the infrastructures did not want us and actually put a lot of challenges in our way. But that notwithstanding, that was almost 4 years ago. And as Chief Armstrong mentioned, not only have we had some extraordinary policies together, which do call out the sanctity of life and the importance of de-escalation, which is a different thing. But in addition, we have, we've had a lot of atrocities, and because of those, we have made better policies. Unfortunately, we've got about 150 policies that are about 20 years old. So we've got to dig out of a lot of a mess. And, Chief Armstrong is definitely the leader for us today. And I mean, he has had I don't want to curse. He's had a whole lot at his feet. I mean, it's the worst time in the world to be leading this change, because although he recognizes the importance of humanity and the importance of change inside policing, that culture is steeped in control. As opposed to protecting and serving. In many instances, it's kind of been, controlling and really arresting your way out. Now, a majority of the police are absolutely got the best heart, the best training, and want to get it right. But we have to grow out of this culture of over-policing, particularly Black communities. And Chief Armstrong understands and sees a lot of the progression that is needed. We led an important ad hoc to even select him, but it was a broad selection process. And we're looking forward. Our armed and unresponsive policy, has led the way for lots of armed and unresponsive people to have been detained or arrested and not killed. And that is progress. We have a lot of other policies on the horizon. We're looking at, how we do IAD. I'm sorry, I'm going on and on. I am delighted.
No, say IAD. Tell them what it is. Folks need to know what it is. Tell them what IAD is. And if you don't, see, you do it.
These are internal
investigations. I know what it means. But
look, we know you know. These are internal investigations, on police. And for a long time, folks were like, why put police in charge of policing whether or not they policed correctly? And, that process is definitely up for, review. And when we talk about whether or not portions of it may be changed to have community police review agency manage it, that will be changed. But what's happening in Oakland, which is really, really exciting, is that, we are taking a look at, how fair is it to have police officers respond to everything? We want them to be able to be successful in the areas that they are most trained. So we're now being really innovative and creative in trying to identify programs where 911 calls may not be responded to by armed police, but perhaps social workers and folks who are trained in that. And quite frankly, I think that, and I don't want to speak for the chief, but I think that they probably like the fact that someone else can handle the areas that they are not best suited for, like mental health and homelessness. But we need police for, the most extreme crimes, and they're exceptionally trained. And so we want to support them. But to your point, we want police, but we don't want misconduct.
Right.
And as I mentioned, I think Chief Armstrong is leading us through a really, really difficult time with the pandemic and all. But I think he's the right man at the right time. And we're going to policy our improvements. We're not going to police them. We're going to policy them.
Like
and leadership is really, really important. And I think, we're getting ready to hire an inspector general, which will be the first ever in the city of Oakland. And that'll be exciting. So we've got nothing but great stuff to look forward to, because we have, I think, a team that wants everybody to succeed. Now, we're going to be hard if we make mistakes, but we want to set it up so that there aren't any.
Let people know what the size of the department, and I mean, I know a little bit about not as much as I should, about the history. How long was Oakland in and under federal, I guess, jurisdiction, and when did that change? I wasn't sure when the handoff was made, because I know there were some starts and stops around traffic stops and so on and so forth. But just let people know how large the force is, and then when the receivership became, but when it turned back to you, Chief, and the city.
So the Oakland Police Department has authorized 788 officers. We're currently staffed at about 708, so we have about 80 vacancies at this point. We are still in the NSA. This is our 18th,
okay.
This is our 18th year under the negotiated settlement agreement. It has been, challenging for us to reach full compliance with the settlement agreement. It's 51 tasks that we have to come into compliance with, and currently we are out of compliance on 7 tasks. Of those 7 tasks, we're in partial compliance with 3 of them. So, part of taking on this position was understanding the situation that we were in, and I had to put forth a plan with the federal monitor that hopefully brings us into full compliance by the end of the year. That's the hope. So we're working diligently on it. I think we have done some really progressive things, though. I think, Dr. Marshall, you just mentioned our reduction in African-American stops. I started an initiative about 5 years ago called Intelligence-Led Policing. And over that 5 years, we've reduced the stops of African-Americans over 65%. And so really, I believe that the beginning of having any negative interaction with a police officer starts from that initial stop, that touch point, right? When you come into contact with police. And so if you can reduce the number of times in particular that you stop African-American men, I think you reduce the likelihood that there's going to be some force encounter between police and law and African-American men. So that's really been our focus, is how do we make sure that our stops are stopping the right people and not everybody. And so I think we've been leading the way on that.
I remember my relationship started with police. I was 11. And that first encounter tainted the rest of my encounters. So yeah. I agree with you 100%. I got to ask, and I guess I could put you on the spot. You don't have to answer if you want to. 788. Do you wish you had? That's a small, to me, sounds like a small number.
It's the
smallest.
smallest.
You wish you had more? Not that you can afford more, but I mean, as a chief, do you wish you had more? Of course, assuming that they're going to do right, which you're going to make them do. But I just thought about that. To police a city like Oakland, it's like you need more officers.
I mean, I think that's the question of the day in the city of Oakland, is what is the right number of police officers for the city of Oakland? I think the statistical data says that for a city this size of nearly 430,000 people, we are the smallest police department in the country for a city this size with this level of violence. So wow. I think that's, that has been an ongoing question. But I'm also very open to the idea that there may be alternative responses to some things, right? I mean, obviously, it takes a huge, chunk of the tax budget in the city of Oakland to pay for police officers. And so I just, so I do think you have to be open to alternatives. But then I also think we can't ignore the reality of there's more calls than we have enough officers to respond to, and there's more violence than we can control at this point. And so I think it requires us in Oakland to rely on other partners to work with us, our Department of Violence Prevention, our community groups, our community-based organizations, all coming together and trying to solve this together, because even if we wanted more officers with 80 vacancies, we won't get them in the building anytime soon. So it's about how we go out and focus on reducing violence every day.
Yeah, and given the climate in now, that's probably the tough time to ask for more police. So thank you, Chief. Thank you. Let's go to San Francisco, and the numbers was starting, because I do have a pretty good idea about the number of officers that in San Francisco, and it's almost, Chief, and my closest almost triple that. Is that correct? And Chief and GJ, and as I say that, talk about successes and challenges, and let folks know how long you've been on the job. Let's get started that way.
Yes. Thank you, Dr. Marshall. First, let me say hi to Commissioner Brookter, Commissioner Jackson, and Chief Armstrong. What's up, LeRonne? All right. So, my story is, hi, everybody. I've been in the profession for, this is going on my 32nd year. I've been here almost 4.5 years. And before I came here, I was with LAPD for 27 years. So kind of like Chief Armstrong was saying, in terms of having the experience of doing this type of work for quite a long time. Before I came here, Dr. Marshall, as you are familiar with, LAPD was under a consent decree. And it took almost 13 years to get finally that work concluded when we were actually signed off by the federal monitor. So almost half of my career in LAPD was doing this type of reform work. And I did it as like Chief Armstrong at various levels in my policing career. And then I came here to the San Francisco Police Department in the midst of a time when the city and the department, under the commission's leadership with Dr. Marshall was on, engaged in the collaborative reform initiative under the Obama administration's United States Department of Justice. And I think that is really, how I got the privilege of being the chief of this department, because I've been engrossed in that type of work for so much of my LAPD career. Number one, I really believed in it. Number two, hopefully I felt that I could bring something here to help move our work forward in San Francisco. So that's kind of my story in terms of my background and my history with not only policing, but this type of work.
So give me some successes and challenges that you feel you've had, and DJ jump in too, that you've had in the city in your 4.5 years.
Well, one of the challenges, as I think all of us on the call can attest to, is this work is long and painstaking. And for us, the way that collaborative reform initiative was designed and written when the US DOJ was involved in the work, we had 18 months. And coming in, I didn't really believe we would finish the work in 18 months, but because there's a lot of foundational and infrastructure type of work that has to be done just to get started. And I think either Commissioner Jackson or I think Commissioner Jackson mentioned changing the mindset of the organization, changing the culture. And that doesn't happen overnight, but you have to do that in many different ways. Policies are one way. The leadership of the organization is definitely one way that you change the culture and the tone that's set at the top. But the other things are, it takes you a while to really dig into your problems, to understand what your problems are, and then find solutions to fix them. Now, thankfully for us in San Francisco, the US DOJ came in and helped us do that, like most departments do when they go under this type of massive reform work. So we had a roadmap, but it was a challenge because it was slower than anybody wanted it to be. And we've had some successes, but that slow start for us was a challenge. And then in September of 2017, about 10 months or 9 months after I got here, or 8 months after I got here actually, when the new presidential administration took office under President Trump, they came in and said, "We're done with this work. We're finished. You guys are on your own." So all the work that we had started to do, we basically had to not only stop, but we had to stop and find a new group of collaborative partners to engage in this work. Because part of what's different with our work and the work that Oakland is doing Ours is the voluntary collaborative, Alton's voluntary as well, but ours is a collaborative reform, which calls for collaborative partners. And under the Obama administration, the U.S. Department of Justice was our partner, and a couple of benefits with that. You know, they came in with their own funding, so the city and county didn't have to pay for the technical assistance and all, you know, finding all the help that we needed to get over the hurdle on a lot of these recommendations. They brought that with them. So when they pulled the plug, we had really basically, it's like the company having no financial backing. Now, you know, this city has a big budget and we care about policing here. So we made a conscious decision that we were going to continue that work, but that called for us calling a new collaborative partner, which we went to the California Attorney General and negotiated a contract with them in February of 2018 and signed an MOU with them to do what the US DOJ was doing, but it didn't come with the funding. So city and county, you know, we had to get it in our budget, and we had to basically on a moment's notice come up with almost $1 million to fund this work, which graciously the mayor and the board of supervisors and the police commission fully supported, and we were able to get that done. But we had to start over, Dr. Marshall, as you know. We had to pretty much start over. We used the same framework. We used the same 272 recommendations, the same findings. But what happened when they concluded that work is there was a non-disclosure agreement, and none of the work that we submitted, none of the advice that was given to us could be shared with our new collaborative partners. So we basically had to start over from scratch. Now, as big as the challenge as that was, it did give us and bring new opportunities because, in my opinion, I think we made both the accountability, the structure of the reform, we tightened it up when the California DOJ came in. We created a whole set of compliance measures that went with each one of the 272 recommendations. So everybody knew kind of what the finish line would be. We didn't have that before. We just had the recommendations. There was no, you got to do A, B, C, and D, and then you're done. We didn't have that. So we created this structure on top of a structure that really set us in a good direction. But even then, it was slow going. And when we got, by June of 2020, we only had about 50 of the 272 recommendations that had been found by the California DOJ to be in substantial compliance. And, you know, we only had about a year for that MOU. So, and this was in the midst of civil unrest across the country, including here in the Bay Area in our city. This was in the midst of COVID, where half of our workforce, particularly the administrative workforce, was working from home. And we had to stay very focused and tight to get this work done. But I am very pleased to say that as of today, we have completed 253 of the 272 recommendations. So about 93% have been submitted. Of those, the California DOJ has deemed about 180 that they have basically signed off and said, you guys have met the mark. And the rest of them that they are reviewing right now, they got about 2 months per the MOU, 45 days actually, to get their reviews in. But we've created such a tight process that when we submit our work and documentation of what we've done, we have this process called a pre-screening. We pretty much already have been told that you're good to go. So we're very confident that everything that's in, that we will get an answer for in about 45 days, we will be found to be in substantial compliance. So that's 93% of the work. And you know, that's you know, the 5 areas of reform: accountability, use of force, bias or reducing bias or having a bias-free police department, recruitment and hiring, and then community policing. Those are the 5 broad areas. And each one of them have a group of recommendations to go along with it. Some of those areas we're totally done. And the outcomes have been, like Oakland, we've reduced use of force by almost over 50%. And we reduced, you know, our biggest bucket of use of force is pointing guns at people, which in San Francisco, that when you intentionally point a gun at somebody, that is a use of force. We've cut that down by over 60%. And the biggest category of people having guns pointed at them was and still is African-American men, but it's been cut down by over 60%. And the largest rate of decrease has been among African-American men. So that's something to celebrate. We're not done yet. We still have a lot of work to do, and we have to sustain the work, but we've had some successes to talk about. And, you know, I got to give my hats out to Oakland because a lot of our work. You know, we look at what's happening, you know, to our brothers across and sisters across the Bay, and they've done some good things, and that we've been able to steal, if you will. I won't use the word steal because we got 2 police chiefs on the phone, but what I will say is we've taken some of their good ideas and some of what they've been doing to reduce bias and disparity, and we brought it to San Francisco. So that's really been good for us.
Commissioner Brookter. All
Yeah.
right. I had to add to that because but go jump into it, my brother.
No, absolutely, Chief. And I think it's okay to say, you know, we look at some of the best practices that are going on, you know, on the other side of the Bay. So first and foremost, I want to just, you know, pay homage. Thank you, Dr. Marshall, for having me here. And since you brought it up, I need to make sure I pay homage to the brothers of the Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated for a great 76th 12th District meeting that was hosted this past week. But, you know, really in terms of my journey, man, my relationship, my friendship and mentorship with Dr. Marshall has me in this position. It was a conversation that we had when he was not reappointed to the commission. And Dr. Marshall told me, you know, he said, we got a phone call, and he said, if there was an individual that I could place on this commission, knowing your background and the work that you do, I would want it to be you. And I just hit the ground running. So I thank you very much, Dr. Marshall, again, for your mentorship and your friendship. Commissioner Jackson, I've heard so much about you, so it's an absolute pleasure to be here with you. Chief Armstrong, it's a pleasure to meet you. And I'm reading out of the chat, but Commissioner Jackson says you're hella Oakland, which I love, love, love. I got a lot of family that went to school at Skyline. So really want to sit down and get an opportunity to rap with you about your body of work. So a little bit about me. It's actually interesting, Doc, as you bring up the numbers in terms of the officers that they have in Oakland. I was recently back home. So folks know I'm originally from Fresno, California, and there's been a major uptick in homicides back home. One of my best friends is a detective, and it's a population over 500,000 residents, and they have a little over 800 police officers, you know? And so it's just very interesting, Doc, you know, that you brought that up. And then I also wanted to lead with just something that was heavy on my heart, because also Commissioner Jackson, and you all can't see it, but she said, we don't have a problem with police. We have a problem with misconduct. But I was speaking with a friend before I left this morning, and he said, most of the issues that take place between people is misunderstanding. And that just, I had to take a step back. I had to take a step back because when you really sit down and you think about it, it's all of this being understood about community, about races, about just so much misunderstanding that takes place that kind of gets us to where we are. But a little bit more about me. I've been on the police commission for about, you know, a little less than 2.5 years at this point. I think, you know, Chief hit on a lot of the successes. You know, when I think about the police department and I just think about the overall city and county of San Francisco, what folks don't understand or really see or think is that the police department is a city agency. And so what most agencies and organizations, as Commissioner Jackson and Dr. Marshall, we know, running organizations, is you have to build infrastructure. And it starts with leadership. But the way that Chief has been able to build the infrastructure for us to get these reforms pushed through, I think Chief would agree with me, in the last 6 to 8 months, we are pushing through reforms. They're getting through meet and confer, which is a big term that I heard when I came onto the commission, that you're going to try to push forward reform. It's going to take 2 or 3 years. We're getting turnaround, you know, 1.5, 2, 3 months, which has been great, which is why we've been able to get to the 93% that we're at. And one of the last meetings that we had, you know, that I really loved hearing from Chief was that we also know while that's being done, there's still, of course, so much more to do, right? Like it doesn't stop. You know, reform is consistent and is perseverance and is continuing to push through. I purposely wore my Nipsey Hussle hoodie today, right? Because it is a marathon. We know how these agencies and departments can move. But during my time, you know, I think one of the things that we thought might be a struggle, Doc, was, at least with our commission, you know, it's a 7-person commission. We know that 4 individuals are appointed by the mayor, 3 are appointed by the Board of Supervisors. And when I first came onto the commission, we had a lot of folks with some seniority. So Tippy Mizuko, who's still a great mentor, Bill Hirsch, Petra De Jesus, who just stepped down from the commission. So now you have a body of 6, and the folks that have seniority have been there for maybe about 2 years and 8 months, you know, at this point, which is actually a good thing, I think. And you know, our conversations that we have with the chief, the fact that you have individuals with fresh eyes, and as Chief said, it takes a lot of work. I mean, coming onto the commission, I try to share with folks and individuals, and Commissioner Jackson can back me up on this. It's 20, 25, 30 hours a week sometimes. Yeah. And it's at a point in a position where we are volunteers. But, in my role, I really get to spend time also with the Department of Police Accountability. So shout out to Paul Henderson and his team for the work that they're doing. But I just think that here in San Francisco, in my time and seeing other departments, at least here in the state of California, the fact that we have such a balance, a commission, the DPA, and then the command staff that the chief has, and how everybody works together and sometimes agrees to disagree. But the fact that we can continue to collectively work together and do the things that are hard but be fair is what has allowed us the success that we had, even though we know there's still a long way to go. But I think we've also continued to do a good job of, as Chief Armstrong was saying, is getting our officers out of their vehicles, getting our officers out of the vehicles, walking the beat, spending time in community, connecting with community-based organizations so that our officers are seen, within the community. And then one of the things we were also able to do in one of our last meetings is pass a DGO that now also honors our officers. So when we talk about the culture within the department, we also need to honor those officers that are doing exceptionally well. Those that have laid their life on the line for us as civilians. And it was something, Doctor, hadn't happened in like 3 years. So to get that DGO pushed through, to get these folks on honors of valor is something that was needed to be done. So you all know, with being on the commission, it's this fine line, right? Because we also have to provide discipline, and we have to be hard but fair, having our policing matrix that we have within the department that really lays out the guidelines to let our officers know that when there is misconduct, this is what the flow looks like and what we're going to go through. I think really has continued to assist us, to push us in the right direction, still with so much more to go.
So let me just lay something out for folks. Folks, a couple of terms. IAD is Internal Affairs Department. For those the novices to this business. DGO is Department of General Orders. And just so people, what the hell is he talking about? Well, that's the Bible by which policing is done. You got to operate under these orders. They call them, believe me, I had no idea when I got on it. What the hell is a DGO? Okay. And it is expensive. It's extensive. I mean, it looks like this, right? All departments have to have some guidelines, and that's what a DGO is. I just want to say about you, DJ, and you got I don't know, was it I don't know if it was a DGO, but you passed a resolution at the commission that got Black Lives Matter. Tell everybody about that, because I was like, this brother ain't playing. Go ahead, say that.
Yeah, well, it was in the heart of what was going on around the country. And myself, and at the time, Commissioner Damali Taylor, we were spending a lot of time with some of the coalitions from the African-American community here in San Francisco. And one of the things that really stood out to me, a gentleman by the name of Majid Crawford, we were in this discussion, and he said it would just be absolutely phenomenal to even get a small gesture from our own police department to have, they just wanted a sticker that said that Black Lives Matter in each of the police departments. And we took that as a commission and really just ran with it. First of all, it came from the voice of the community. Commissioner Taylor and I drafted the resolution. And I mean, Chief backed it up from day one. And we took it from just being a sticker to now this elaborate movie-sized life poster that's probably about as tall as I am. You can't see me with me sitting down, and Dr. Marshall's a little bit taller than me, but I'm about 6'1", Chief Armstrong. And this poster just lays out this whole resolution about not just what Black Lives Matters means, but what it means to each station here in San Francisco. And we were able to get those posted in every station in San Francisco. And it wasn't meant to be a political stunt or political heist to back up the Black Lives Matter movement. It was simply one of the things that we fight for on a daily basis, to say that our lives matter, and they matter to the San Francisco Police Department. And I think we were able to do that beautifully. I think in the beginning, some folks were talking about the size and the colors, not understanding that they're Pan-African colors, which is a whole nother historical conversation we need to have. sometimes within our communities. But, you know, it was just it was a small gesture, yet a very huge gesture. I think one, huge in terms of having the chief and the department and the command staff back that up and having it and actually doing what we said in a timely manner. That's one of the other things, as we know, when you pass a resolution or we pass a department general order, sometimes things can take time. But we said what we were going to do, did it better than what we felt like we could do. And you know, so now when you go into the stations here in San Francisco, that poster is front and center on our walls at all of our stations. So I was real proud of community for voicing that, you know, this is just something that to our community felt or seemed small, but was something that to me was just so huge in terms of riding the ship and continuing in the direction that we need to go.
Oh, it was huge. Just the fact that I said it, people went, what? What? They put that in the police stations? So sometimes those things say a lot in the effort that the department is trying to go in. Let me explain to the folks that are watching. He's talking about, you know, we're focusing on Oakland, we're focusing on San Francisco. Well, good reason. These are the chiefs that we have available to us. But when people look at a police accountability and reform and they see this happened in New Orleans and this happened in Wisconsin and this happened in, I'm looking at this one in Virginia where they pepper sprayed an Army officer on a traffic stop, you know, that there's the shooting of the young man who had the cell phone in Chicago. There was the shooting, I mean, in Sacramento. Then there was a shooting of the young man who put his hands up in Chicago. What people don't understand is that there is no national policing. There is no national policing. And if you're going to fix police departments, and Chief and I have talked about this number, there's roughly 18,000 departments. And if they're in the sheriff's departments, there's more than that around the United States. Because there is no national policing, each one of these departments has to basically fix themselves. And so when you have to look and see how Oakland's doing, and you have to look and see how San Francisco's doing. You have to look at Daly City, how Daly City's doing, how's doing. And that's all these chiefs and these commissioners have control over. Now, you know, I think, you know, they can become examples of what you can do in other cities, but, you know, Chief Armstrong doesn't have control of what goes on in Detroit. And, you know, Commissioner Jackson doesn't have control on what goes on in Fremont, right? And neither does Chief Scott. So you have to look at individual cities to see how they're doing and progressing. And then, you know, what I'd like to do is, if we have time around here, to get to put a playbook together about things that you think would work well anywhere. And I was even reading that there's a current bill, I guess, the George Ford Policing Act that's in Congress right now, passed in the House of Representatives by the Democrats, has not got to the Senate. And, you know, Tim Scott has his own version, the Republican version. But even that bill would only focus on, I think maybe 10% of policing, right? It doesn't even necessarily mean that it's all of that. And a lot of things they're talking about are things that have already been done in a lot of cities, like body cameras and those kinds of things. But people just don't understand how heavy lift this is to do something about departments. Each of the chiefs, both of you, I got a text from one of my alumni, and he's a policeman in Los Angeles, and he's a good cop. He's a good cop. Morehouse graduate. You know, I remember when he went to Regina's son went to Morehouse. But I checked on him. I said, man, how are you doing? Are you in the house of family? Are you staying safe? He said, thanks for checking on me. These are tough times to be Black and in this profession. And I always say the worst thing for a good cop is misconduct by a bad officer. And I use the word bad in that sense. As officers and as Black officers who want to do things right, and as Black police chiefs, how do you hold up? I mean, how do you hold up? Because when they see you, they see the uniform. They don't see Chief Scott, you know, they don't see Chief Armstrong. Maybe your friends know you. Well, they see that's a cop. I don't like cops, you know, and he's responsible. How did the two of you hold up, not only as individual officers, but as police chiefs who are trying to make reforms?
I'll jump in there, Dr. Marshall, on that question. First of all, if I can give my daughter some acknowledgement, because she actually designed the graphics on our Black Lives Matter, the posters we have in the station. And I know she didn't want the attention, but when Commissioner Brookter, when they did the resolution, and I called her because she's younger and she's out there and actually is very civically and socially engaged. Let me put it that way. So like she's my conscience on this stuff. So she helped design that. So I just want to give her some kudos and thanks for that. But to your question about I could and I think Chief Armstrong and me have probably a lot in common in this regard. At least I think so, because we've been kind of knowing each other a little bit for quite a while now, and this is number one. I think it's really a privilege for people like us to be in the positions we're in during this moment.
Yeah.
And I say that humbly, but I also say that because when as tense as things were this past year, I can just say for us, I think me being out front with a mindset of we need to just kind of be quiet and listen to what people are telling us right now, and we need to pay attention to what history has taught us, and we need to react in a way that we can move this work forward. And we need to respect how Black people feel and why they feel what they feel. It's a blessing that I'm in the position to have that perspective. So for me, I got this is not the first time I have said this. And people were asking me during the heat of the summer when everything was crazy, how you feeling? How you holding up? I think I was as energized as I've ever been in my career, because I felt like it was our time to do something that could move this work forward. And the wind was behind ourselves and still is behind ourselves. So, I think we all, those of us that are, Black men that are in this profession, we have our challenges, and we see things and hear things, and, got to step up and be courageous and speak out when you need to speak out. And I didn't grow up in Oakland with LeRonne, but from what I hear and what I know about him, he did it, and I know I did it. And you walk through this profession with your head held high, and not get defensive or get put in a position where you are ashamed of who you are and what you bring to the table as a Black man. And I think that's really, really important. You get to the position of a chief of police, and this is something that I truly believe. If you are fortunate enough to be there long enough, that department starts to take on your personality. And when you're with a chief that's combative and arrogant, it's going to embolden those officers to be the same way. If you have a chief that cares about the community, respectful to the community, and that's the way they make decisions, including disciplinary decisions and accountability decisions, after a while, that department starts to come along. And hopefully you're joining a department that feels that way anyway, but they begin to take on the personality of the chief. So I think it's a great, great opportunity for us in this time, as challenging as it is, that we have these positions, because I think we can make it.
Chief, let me just say this. You did something the other day that it was so rare that they started the article with a gasp. It says, San Francisco Chief Bill Scott offered a rare public apology. And they have rare in parentheses, in quotation marks, this week for a recent shooting of a unarmed car burglary suspect. Talk about that, why you did that, and the importance of doing that.
Dr. Marshall, first and foremost, it was the right thing to do. And you know how these incidents, go. The officer-involved shootings, there is nothing more volatile, more explosive in our profession than an officer-involved shooting, particularly right now, and particularly when it involves an African American or Black man, and when that Black man is unarmed. And even if we believe that everything happened the way it's supposed to happen, it's difficult. But I think it's about the time where, a lot of times we don't really know what we have, a week into these things. But, in this one, even though the case is not over, there's still investigation to go. We knew enough to know that this should not have happened. And to be silent on this for another year, another 10 months while we wrapped up this investigation was not, in my opinion, the right thing to do. And so when we, start planning for our town hall, I said right up front, once we realized what we had, is we're going to do the right thing. And I know it's outside the norm. I know we haven't done it this way before, but it's the right thing to do. And it's the right time to do it. So, of course, there's consultation with the city attorney and all these things that we have to do to make sure, that we're doing things thoughtfully. But I was determined to do the right thing here. And, that situation should not have happened. And we weren't going to wait for, a year or 8 months or whatever to say what we needed to say to the man who was shot, to his family, to his friends, and the public. Because when we do these things and we don't do them right, we let everybody down, including ourselves. And so if the chief and the department can't stand up and say, you know what, we own this and we take accountability, how do we expect our officers to do it? And you know what? That officer involved actually was given the opportunities. We didn't coach him. We didn't do any of that. We said, I said, through his attorney, we're going to give you an opportunity. If you have something to say, if it's appropriate, I will say it. And that's what he did. And he stood up and he took accountability and apologized for his actions. And it was the right thing to do. I know it's not the usual thing to do, but it was definitely the right thing to do. And I think the public, I know his mother appreciated it because she called like 3 times.
I'm gonna tell you who else appreciated, his attorney, because I saw the attorney saying that. Now that's what he said at that point. But yeah, great job.
So it was just about trying to do what's right, Dr. Marshall. And it's like I said, we're at a time where those of us that sit in these leadership positions, we kind of have to not so much look back and rely on, we've done it this way. We got to do what's right. And it's got to be within the boundaries of appropriateness, but we got to do what's right. And I think, I'm grateful and, I think it's a privilege to be in this position where I have a chance to do these type of things.
Chief Armstrong, how's it you? Same thing, as a Black man walking in there now and you a cop, man. I don't want to be no cop like you be a cop. But I hate cops,
I often tell people, when I heard that throughout my long career, when they would say, man, I don't like cops. I said, if you ever had to call 911 and a police officer were to show up, who would you rather show up? Me or somebody else? And every time their answer was always me, because they knew that they could trust me and they knew that I was going to make the right decision and the fair decision. Right. And so I think in this moment, I think for me, it is an opportunity, right? I mean, who would have ever thought out of this long career that this moment would come right now in the midst of a national call for changing policing? And so I think, for me, timing is everything, and this is the right time. And so if you grow up in Oakland and the home of the Black Panthers, if you grew up in West Oakland, where I grew up, you didn't have a relationship with police at all. And the saddest part is that sometimes the communities that are the least safe in the city, who have the greatest need for safety, have the least amount of trust in police. And so, I thought, how can I impact policing in a different way? How can I be a part of the change that, I wanted to see? I wanted, wonder why, I couldn't feel safe. And so and you really realize that when violence hits your own home. And so I was unfortunate enough to have my brother killed. And in that moment, when you lose a relative and you understand now the only way to get justice is actually through police, right? Because community is calling for something different. Where I'm from, that's you're expected to retaliate on behalf of your family member. That's how it goes. And in that moment, you want the police department and you want law enforcement to do what it is that they're supposed to do and identify the person and hold that person responsible. But you know, for me in this moment, as I think about change in policing across the country, I think about as an African American man, you know, the fears that I've had my entire life from driving a car, and every time I see a police car get behind me, my anxiety level go out the roof. And less known when they turn the lights on, me being afraid about what is this moment going to look like for me. And so for me to be in this leadership position, to be able to make policy, to make, you know, create training, to be able to address the implicit bias that has been a part of policing for so long, that's what I think this moment means for me, to be able to change a culture that wasn't meant for me. It's so ironic that we celebrated the city of Oakland's 160 something birthday last week. I think it's the 159th or something like that. And I thought in that moment, as I was taking a photo to celebrate the city's historic moment, I thought, wow, when this city was created, they had no idea that I would be their police chief one day. Right? That wasn't meant for me. And so for me, it's not just about today. It's about young African-American boys that see me now and recognize that they can obtain this position as well, that they can be part of their own, you know, safety, you know, community, public safety in their communities, and they can be leaders and they can make change in systems that don't work for Black people. And so that's what my goal is. I know this system doesn't work in the way in which it's been for many years. And now as I sit in this leadership position, how can I address the things that nobody else has wanted to talk about? How can I talk about searching of probation and parolees just because they're African American? How can I talk about when you use force and who you decide to use force on, right? How can I begin to talk about how we look at officers' action on a day-to-day basis to make sure it's consistent with policy, right? So putting these processes in place to hold people accountable is just about doing the job, but doing the job the right way and having tremendous respect for my community and wanting people to police my community in a fair and just way. So when I leave, I hope my legacy is that things have changed so much so that when I walk down the street, I don't have to have that same fear. I'm hoping that my kids don't have to tell my grandsons the story of what you should do when a police officer stops you. That's the challenge. How can we end the cycle of needing to fear law enforcement? And that's the challenge.
When I wrote the book, my book, I wrote a piece about the police, and I said to a lot of the, in fact, actually, this has got me in trouble a couple of times when people read the book and read it through their lens. But what I said was, you know, to many in the Black community, the police seem like an occupying army, right? and there's something else I wrote, and I said, the problem as I see it is that not all police are bad, but the good ones can't seem to do anything about the bad ones. That was my one line I read. And what I am seeing and hoping, not just through your individual personalities, but through the changes that you are making in department, that the good ones are doing something about those that do misconduct, changing the policies, whistleblower protection. Now, a lot of people don't know what that is, right? But making it mandatory for officers, you know, not to sit and watch what happened to George Floyd, you know, not to. Reportable duty to intervene. See, Chief, I do remember the stuff that we talked about as a commission, right? In fact, they got the duty to intervene, putting these things in place so that those officers, if they don't do it, they can be punished. You know, it's not just good men and good women police officers, it's getting policies in place that prevent these officers, you know, from doing these things and changing. How many times have we heard that it was in policy? Well, if you change the policy, it won't be in policy, right? When you hear reportable use of force, when you hear time and distance, when you hear de-escalation, when you hear all of these things that are written into changing the way officers operate. And that's because you guys have seen and looked at best practice and say, look, we got to change the way, you know, this DGO is written, so that officers operate differently, so they can be held to different standards. When you see proportionality, you know, so it's not just good men. I know you guys are great men, and you know, I know, you know, Commissioner Jackson's great, and Commissioner Brookter is great, but also changing the way the department operate and the training and who you pick in the first place will lead you to. But it's a huge lift. It's a huge lift. It's a huge lift. And people don't have a lot of patience and a lot of time, only because every time something happens, I always say that a Canadian Mountie would be held by something that happens in Georgia just because he has on a blue uniform. So I know we got some questions in the chat, and I want to get to sort of a playbook and ask things. What is the latest best policy and best practice in your opinion around? And I think I have an idea, but just your thoughts around edge weapons, knives, basically. What is the current thinking around when somebody has a knife? I believe if somebody I believe the current way is that if a member of the public is threatened, if force can be used. But what is the best thinking right now about when an officer encounters somebody with a knife and not a gun?
Dr. Marshall, I would offer a couple of things. As you know, a lot of departments, including ours, have invested a lot of training and time and money in developing their crisis intervention techniques and tactics. And the cornerstone of those tactics are creating time, distance to give yourself an opportunity to react in a way where you don't have to react with your gun. So, I can speak for us within our use of force policy, and you were there when we changed the policy so drastically. De-escalation and time and distance, now are written in the policy, which makes them mandatory in terms of they're always exigent circumstances. You can't predict everything, but what we train to and what we teach to in terms of policy is create enough space and distance from yourself where if a person has a knife, you can not be put in a position to have to use your firearm. We have other weapons, less lethal bean bags and those type of weapons that if you give yourself an opportunity and have enough distance, you can deploy those less lethal. And by and large, we're very successful. Now, I will say out of our last 4 officer-involved shootings, I think three of them involve knives. And, there were some where officers did what they could and still didn't, person closed the space on them and they ended up in shootings. But the ideal situation, and I think at least for us, is to create as much space as you can so you can slow things down. And this is what, in most policies these days, you want to put what's described as friction in your policies. And what I mean by friction is whenever you can, you put policy improvements in your policies that forces officers to slow down. Time and distance is one of them. And if you don't have those things, you don't have time to think. And that's when we have bad outcomes, more often than not. So I would think that has been, for many departments, a game changer. And as elementary as that sounds, a lot of officers early in my career knew how to do that, but it wasn't in anybody's policy, at least when I started. Now it's in almost every good use of force policy. It's going to have something in there about de-escalation and time and distance, and it should. So it forces us to slow down. It forces us to think about what we're doing. And tactically, you put yourself in a position where you have time to react without using lethal force. And that's the ideal situation.
Commissioners Brookter and Commissioner Jackson, do you think if we were laying out, and I've had a lot of calls of, give me a playbook for police accountability and reform. I mean, I would get calls from Massachusetts, right? And the first thing I always tell them, and I always say this, you got to have a civilian commission. I always say that. You'd be surprised, people out there, how many cities do not have a civilian commission. In fact, when I was on a commission, we tried to get other commissions just to meet with, and we found like 5. So you can imagine all of the cities in the United States, that are 18,000, that don't have any civilian eyes on policing. So I always said that. But both of you, do you feel like the next step is a solid use of force policy? Do you think it begins there? I'm just curious.
Well, one, I'm going to I'll yield the floor to Commissioner Jackson, but I just wanted to follow up, Doc, on the last point, because Chief touched on it. But one of the things, and correct me if I'm wrong, Chief, I believe at least over 80% of our department is crime intervention trained, right? They have gone through CIT. And
Now
it's
explain that,
huge.
because I know what it is, but people don't know what
It's
crisis
huge.
intervention training is. And Ann says, I don't know what that is.
Mhm.
I have a way of making people think about it, but you do it, DJ.
Yeah, well, I think, Chief articulated it, wonderfully, thinking about time and distance and how are we training our officers to come into a situation without bias and just being able to come in, thought-free to be able to really assess the situation and what's going on. And it's one of the presentations that I can definitely wholeheartedly say that my colleagues and I really enjoy receiving from the department. And I think it's one of the things that we try to advocate for and fight for, to make sure that there's funding to say, how do we push this to make sure that we get to 100%, right? When we're thinking about training, as much as we're pushing forward reforms, we know that training is also a part of that. So I just really wanted to uplift that, because I think it was something, that Chief brought up, but I wanted to make sure I highlighted.
So I'm writing that down in the playbook. I remember we got that from the city of Memphis. I remember when they brought this here. Like, what the hell is the crisis center? And let me tell you what it's like. They think like hostage negotiators. Okay, let's put it like that. They think like that. They don't go with their guns drawn. They go, let's talk this person out of it. Okay, Commissioner Jackson.
Well, we were really fortunate to be in a position where it was community that got together and demanded that a measure actually be built into the charter, so that the commission could not just exist for one mayoral term. So that was really important. And the way the measure was written really made our commission one of the strongest in the country, because we also had the responsibility or the opportunity to decide if we wanted to terminate a police chief. And in fact, we did that. Right. Now, to your point, I think it's really very interesting, because we did just pass a very broad use of force policy that I believe Chief Armstrong is actually operating with now. But it was extremely important to identify both de-escalation and the preservation of life, like in the opening narration. Right. So when you talk about people presenting knives, should they die over, presenting a knife or trying not to be arrested? Should they die behind that? And I think that what has happened is that, we are not arresting our way out of crimes these days. There are certain things like the 13-year-old who was killed in the alley. Yeah. OPD would never do that. We don't run people down like that. And so having more responsible and accountable protocols is really, really important. But to your point, one of the things that I want to do is actually document the first 4 years of our commission work to identify the resistance that we dealt with, the observations. Our first policy was the one on probation and parole, and not allowing warrantless searches. And these are very critical things, but what they are also is taking a bit of risk to not presume that everybody already had the answer. Otherwise, we wouldn't be in this position, right? And so when we talk to other people who are thinking about creating commissions, specifically like Vallejo, we want to be able to clarify the very thoughtful processes that community proposed that got us here, and then continue to operate in very innovative and thoughtful processes. So when I mentioned the 911 calls, we didn't think that up. That was a system that was being used in Oregon called, oh God, now I can't remember the name. Thank you, Cahoots, thank you. And so the really important part is to look around and see where best practice or where the most creative innovations are occurring, and then try them. People ask me all the time, well, is it gonna work? Well, I don't know. We have to try and fail and try and succeed, or set it up so that we can, put ourselves in the best positions to succeed. But, emotional intelligence training, which is really important, because oftentimes people have no real idea about their own self-awareness. How if you make a joke about somebody dying, that that's really a bad thing to do, particularly in the Black neighborhood, because that ain't funny. You know, because, and so just really having some self-awareness about yourself, and then trying to ensure that that implicit bias, which we all have, that we acknowledge it, don't deny it, embrace it, understand it, so that you can change it.
We got some, thank you, hon. Thank you. We got some questions in the chat, and I don't know if they're, because I got plenty more material, but if somebody has put something in the chat they may want to ask, I don't know if we do we or we don't.
And maybe have us back too, okay? Part 2.
Oh, look, this is a marathon, Nipsey. So we ain't got no problem with that.
Hey, Dr. Marshall, can I just add to what Chief Scott said? And you know, you guys talked about time and distance. I think one of the other
Chief, you're muted.
Oh, we got him. He's fine.
One of the other things that we're doing now is once you create time and distance, mandating that you come up with a plan, right? And so we're not allowing officers now, once they create time and distance, to still sort of force a situation, right? We're saying now that you need to actually tell us what the plan is. What contingencies did you put in place to address whatever potential danger you might face, right? So I think to Chief Scott's point, if you did have less lethal tools available, what were all the tools you had available? Who, identifying individual people to be what we call a talker, right? So we're not allowing multiple people to communicate with an individual, right? So there are certain things once you do create time and distance that if you actually go through this process, it actually decreases the likelihood that you'll have this force encounter. So the crisis intervention training is critical, but it's also critical that there's a plan in place on what are we trying to accomplish. And that's where de-escalation becomes important. When you emphasize, we lead with the outcome we like to see, right? So making sure that when our supervisors are briefing our teams, that they're saying to them like, hey, we don't want to shoot this guy. Here's what we want to do, right? We want to have a safe outcome. We want him to surrender, give him a chance to drop it, right? So we want to talk about the things that we want to see in that particular outcome. That doesn't mean that the circumstances won't change, but we're prepared to address any particular thing. And I think that's when we're talking about slow it down. But when you slow it down, what does that mean now? Where do you go? What's the plan now? How do we get to the resolution that we'd like to see? And so that's what we're pushing our officers to go beyond even slowing it down. It's like time and distance. Now that you've created that and you're communicating with an individual, now how do we begin to address this in a way in which we can preserve life? And I think what we've seen in Oakland is that, we haven't had a shooting of an individual with a knife in many years, right? But I will say, if there's data to support the fact that we were ranked as the city with the lowest number of officer-involved shootings in the country for a city this size in the last 5 years. And it's because of this de-escalation training and things that we're talking about now. There's a way to do this that minimizes use of force encounters. I think one of the most, forward-thinking policies that we've done is the not allowing officers to foot pursue people into backyards, right? And so the fact that officers cannot enter backyards in a foot pursuit, because the data says that once officers pursue somebody into a backyard or into an enclosed area, it is most likely going to lead to a use of force encounter. So if you know that, that is how, and you have the data that says that we can still accomplish our task, which is taking that person into custody, but not putting ourselves into a situation where we know it's likely that we're going to have to use force. So instead, we mandate that they put a perimeter together around the individual, and then we come up with a plan to safely arrest the person, right? And so that's the acknowledgement that for many years, several of our officer-involved shootings occurred when officers were in foot pursuit of somebody, and then recognizing that once they go into a backyard, we no longer need to go into pursue into yards and things like that, into unknown areas that sometimes can heighten our safety.
For all the defunded police people out there, I'm sure if you were on, and I can imagine I'm closing my eyes and going back in time, sitting at the commission, and they would all show up and scream that's a separate conversation, taking money away from the police department and investing it in, other programs. In fact, they've done that. They did that in San Francisco. They may be doing it, they're proposing to do it in Richmond. That's a separate conversation. But even if you have 5 police officers, you're still going to have to get them to act. So that's what this conversation is about. This is about whatever officers you have on duty, unless you completely demolish the police department, which some people probably feel that I don't see how that would work. You still have to have those police officers acting appropriately. I hope people are hearing some of the ideas that are out there. I hadn't heard that one before, pursuing into backyards, and I have seen that happen a lot of times. Another issue that has come up, this is things I've heard from people, and is lateral transfers. I think we all know what lateral transfers are. Those are people who work in departments who have had a history of disciplinary problems, who then move on to another department. And obviously, either being drummed out or leaving and then going to someplace else with your bad record. So I understand in California, I think they're compiling a registry now. But I don't know if that's wishful thinking on my point, to identify those officers so that somebody can't come from Minnesota and move on to, in Oakland with that, and his or her history. Do you think that, I feel that's something that definitely should be done, because a lot of times they just move from one place to another and take their bad behavior with them. That's in my playbook. That's in my playbook. I know, Chief, in San Francisco, we have no shooting at moving vehicles. We put that in, right? A lot of people see the movies and they shoot out the tires. Well, you shoot out the tires, you're gonna cause a 15-car accident. That's in the playbook, and that seems to be something that's a best practice now around the country. No carotid restraints, obviously no chokeholds. But like I said, this could all be in one city and not in another one. And again, that's what makes this thing so difficult. So that's why I think this playbook is really important. And to be able to say, this is what we're doing, and it will work in your town, to be able to say. See if you wanted to say something, because your mic came off. Go right ahead.
Oh, I thought you were going to ask me a question, Dr. Marshall, but I will say, as far as the playbook, there's I think Commissioner Jackson, Chair Jackson had talked, or somebody had talked about the history when we started our conversation tonight. And in terms of playbooks, to me, there's been like 3 really pivotal moments in policing going back 100 years. First one was in 1929, and that was a presidential commission when President Hoover was the president. It's called the Wickersham Commission. And the reason that was during Prohibition, and policing didn't look anything like it looks today. But that commission brought recommendations that ended up leading to internal affairs being a common thing across the country. But it took about 30, 40 years to get there. And that commission actually was the commission that made recommendations that eventually, a lot of historians say, led to the Miranda decision. That didn't happen until the mid-60s, where you had to read people their rights and give them the right to have an attorney. So that was kind of a pivotal commission. And then in 1967, President Johnson had a commission. And the reason I bring this up is you mentioned playbooks. And in President Johnson's commission, it was really times like what we're facing right now. And as you know, in the mid-60s, there were civil unrest and protests, and it was a civil rights movement, pushing forward civil rights, and policing was in a very, very bad state. But a couple of things out of that commission included community policing. Really, the structure and the blueprint for community policing came out of that commission. But it took about 30 years till LeRonne and I were, early in our careers, so that really took root. And then in 2014, President Obama had the 21st Century Policing Task Force. In my mind, that's the blueprint, probably for the next 20 years. We're 7 years into this, but a lot of the things that are being talked about on this call right now were recommended in that 21st Century Task Force that President Obama put forth in 2014. So if you read that, it is a playbook. And for those of us like myself who read that, when I was at a pivotal point in my career, believed in it, once we get in these positions, that's kind of how we're wired. And I think to your point, it's really difficult to get all of the police departments across the country on the same sheet of music. But we do have somewhat of a guidebook in that 21st Century Policing Task Force, all the recommendations from President Obama, that if we do those things, we're going to be in a much better place. And I think folks like me and LeRonne, who were, probably, coming up when this thing came out and we bought into it, at least I did. And I talked to LeRonne, so I don't want to speak for him, but that's the playbook that we're running from, that we're working out of. And it has changed policing. And if we continue to do those things, it will continue to change policing. I think we had a little bump in the road, the last 4 years, and they kind of went away from it. But I think we're back in that groove now.
How much pushback are you guys getting, and for all of you, as you move forward and want a humane, and I'm going to say humane, because I'm going back to that initial stop, a department without bias, without, I've heard officers say things like, even when they're in the department, because officers will tell me this, right? And it's subtle, but it's telling. They will say, look, when you're in this community, but when you're over here, you really got to watch it. So that's planted in their head what do you call it? They're going through training. So when they go over there, they're already apprehensive, right? And that's a nice word. I could say they got their hand on their gun. But as you try to push through this different way of policing communities, dealing with the biases they bring and the recruitment and the training and getting officers. I heard a high-ranking officer say one time that if an officer told on another officer when he saw something that wasn't right, that he was snitching. I'm like, snitching? What do you mean snitching? I was incensed, and I'm not gonna say who it was, because I know who he was. I was. What do you mean he's snitching? No, he's trying to tell him to do the right thing, and you have to build in duty to intervene. Because we're at a crossroads here, with George Floyd and all of this. How much pushback are you individually getting from officers on the inside? And I won't even say the union, because I won't even go there, because what's the resistance for you? And I know you're going to stay the course, right? I'm not worried about that. But do you see folks getting it? And again, I gotta say, this is a dangerous job. We just had 2 officers killed in Chicago. We had a couple officers. We know that. We complete. No, everybody gets that. But there comes a point where we don't want to have to give our kids the talk, right? There comes a time we don't have to want to give our kids the talk. That we're gonna give them the talk until we get treated differently in that initial stop. But how do you feel about the reform, just in your in the departments that you oversee? How do you feel about that?
Well, I think, that I've been fortunate. I think the Oakland Police Department, because we've been, having these reform efforts for the last 18 years, I'll say that our officers are primed for this change. I think a lot of the things that we're hearing in this moment, these calls for change in this moment, Oakland has been doing for many years, because we were mandated to do a lot of them, right? And so I think, from our officers, acceptance of wearing body-worn cameras, right? I think they, all of them came into policing under body-worn cameras, right? When we have these conversations at the top of the organization about progressive ideas, they've come in under progressive policies. And so as we evolve with continuing to come up with new ways of policing, I think it's our job as leaders to make sure that they understand why these changes are important and what the benefits are, right? As we seek to build trust, we're trying to make sure my executive team, we're making sure our officers understand that this makes us better, right? It makes community feel like they can trust us when we're out there doing our job. It makes people more willing to comply with us, right? When they trust you, when they have some confidence in you. And so I think, they have bought in. I think the challenge for us is when we do see good policing, when we see good police officers, how do we push communities that have had a history of bad policing to acknowledge when they are starting to receive good police services, right? When you are seeing police departments that are not impacting community in the ways in which they have for many years, when they're starting to actually try to invest in building a relationship, how do we get that openness from community to also accept that it's a different day? Because I think that's what sometimes causes people to step back, is when they don't believe that all the work that they're putting in, all of the time that they're trying to get better and improve is giving them the response that they would like to see from community. Like, you take one step forward, you expect somebody to hopefully take a step towards you. So that is a difficulty. How do we keep people motivated in this moment? How do we keep people wanting to even be police officers and do this job? It's a difficult job with a lot of scrutiny, where one mistake can change your life, right? One bad decision can change your family's lives and everybody, right? And so how do you, as leaders, begin to continue to motivate people to do this very difficult job? We have to train them and put them out there as best prepared as we can to make good decisions while they're out there. And so I think that's what this moment brings to me, is it's this balance of both recognizing we are asking a lot from police officers, but also acknowledging when they're doing it right.
Chief Scott.
Yeah, I would just add, in larger departments like both, Chief Armstrong and I, or sit at the top of, we can't be everywhere. And as much as, we meet with our command staff all the time, like daily. But to me, in addition to everything that Chief Armstrong said, I would add that you got to get to the hearts and minds of your people, particularly those people at the front line supervisory level, the sergeant. Yeah. And every time I talk to a new class of sergeants, and I feel this way, and I've felt this way ever since I was a sergeant, sergeants have more impact on the success or failure of a police department than most people know, because they're at the front lines, making it happen. And all the policies that we're, trying to push through the department, those sergeants have to be the ones that are out there in the field when things are happening to make sure things are getting done. And if you can't get through to those, and we look, I'm not going to tell you, we neither one of us, I can speak for myself, have reached and gotten through to everybody in terms of touching their hearts and minds about, which way this department is going. There's some people that still don't get it. I know that. But when you get to those supervisors and you get them in a way that they really believe in what we're doing, and they're willing to step up and be accountable and hold their officers accountable, that's when you're going to have real success. So, that we can't be everywhere, and a lot of energy goes into really trying to get to those, not only the police officers doing the work, but get to those sergeants, because, all these critical calls that we talk about, where these critical incidents can have bad outcomes, usually you want that sergeant to be there and take a step back and calm everybody down and manage the incident, make sure all the policies are being followed in the way that we want them to be followed. And if that does not happen, we're going to have some problems. And so one of the things, when you talk about accountability, there's nothing that makes me more upset than to have officers get in trouble, even though they have their own personal responsibility to do what's right and follow policies. But when there's a supervisor right there and they don't step up, we have to deal with that situation. So the accountability at that level of the organization is so important to get things done. And I think, it's an important, all the ranks are important. I'm not saying nobody, doesn't count, but what those sergeants do can make or break a police department. So, we got to get to those sergeants.
And to my civilian commissioners who have taken on, like I always said, people ask me, what's the hardest thing you've ever done? Working with young people? I said, oh, hell no. Hey, nothing. Give me every gangbanger, drug dealer in the world, put it in front of me. We can go at it, right? Dealing with the police department, because it was so entrenched. So how do you feel things are moving? You optimistic?
I'm optimistic, and I'm optimistic for a couple reasons. We now have good leadership. We are getting ready to bring in an inspector general, which will provide more capacity for reviewing cases that need to be reviewed. We are updating policies and protocols, and we're not just doing it by ourselves, we're doing it with the support and the help of community members through many ad hoc committees. We are the Reimagining Public Safety Task Force, which came up with like 1 million recommendations. So many of them are right on target. So now we have a playbook that City Council can try to legislate through the budget. And the creativity and the innovation that is coming out of Oakland, sometimes inside the department and sometimes outside the department, because, let's face it, Dr. Marshall, as youth developers, we have to take risks all the time. Mm-hmm. We don't always know if something's going to work, but we got to try. I believe the same is true in the police department. Not that people can go rogue, but good ideas don't have to be regurgitated. They can be created. They can be, partnered with other entities like the community. A lot of work to do, but I believe the key thing is leadership, and Chief Armstrong's going to take us there.
I couldn't concur more with Commissioner Jackson. Couldn't concur more. I think when I sit down, right now, Dr. Marshall, I kind of stated it earlier. I think having a rather senior commission right now, folks are coming in with a new lens, really taking heed to 21st century policing. And I think the availability and the openness and the fact that we can reach Chief pretty much at any given time, there's that open sense of dialogue. It's almost like this new sense of breath that's being, kind of pumped from the commission, I think, into the department on how we work. Definitely want to shout out my colleagues. I think Commissioner Cohen, since she's come on board as the president, has done a great job of being efficient in the way that we conduct our meetings and the way that things are being conducted, which definitely helps, at the commission level. But one of the things I was also thinking about, Doc, as we were having this discussion, you talk about the playbook. I really hope and think that there's this great opportunity. And again, the way that I view the police department is, again, as a city agency. Like, that's like the 50,000 foot level for me in the way in which I view the department. It's an agency that's within the city and county of San Francisco. And as we know, so many of them fund our nonprofit organization. And Commissioner Jackson and I were talking about this in the chat. It's so key, as we know and understand, as we've just gone through and continue to go through COVID-19, how much we needed to rely on our community-based organizations throughout the nation. So I think that there's this great opportunity while we talk about training for our officers in the equipment that our officers need to be able to really equip our departments with having more access to these community-based organizations that can actually help with more violence intervention. So we're talking about CIT, but how do we use our organizations like Alive and Free to intervene before we even have to have our officers come out to deal with a young person, Doc, as we know, that's out on the corner, that's really trying to provide for their family, but they lack the resources in the underserved community. So they're doing some of the things that are illegal that they're doing in order to provide. So to be able to have somebody in the community, on the department, that has the access to the resources for this young person, so that we don't have to continue to see our Black and brown brothers and sisters, being incarcerated and being arrested, to say, hey, there's this program that you can go to, young man, and it's on Tuesday nights. And Lady Estelle is going to be there, and she's going to give you game on how you ensure that you aren't a part of this system that's been created for you to continue to fail it. So, I really wanted to make sure that I put that out there, because I think, COVID-19, I think, just really exacerbated what was going on around the world, and definitely, around the country. Conversations that we had with Chief every Wednesday, we were seeing an uptick and continue to see an uptick in shootings, right, in the city and county of San Francisco. So, being able to work with the SVIPs, which is the Street Violence Intervention Program, and, working with Supervisor Walton here in this district around just a community safety plan for the district, and convening community-based organizations to also assist. Because again, even when we look at the number of police officers we have here in San Francisco, which is 3 times the officers in Oakland, we still don't have enough police officers for a city that has over 800,000 individuals, right? We talk about what's the amount of police officers we should have, here in the city. So definitely on a tangent, Doc, but just wanted to put that out there. This is an opportunity coming out of the year that I won't mention, I kind of call this 2020 and some change, for us all collectively to be able to work together to really enhance, humanity. We started off the conversation, this isn't a policing problem. This is a human problem. We have human beings within a system that just sometimes just don't want to abide by the rules. And it happens across industries, right? And that's one of the tough conversations that I have with folks sitting in the commission seat, especially when things are going on across the nation. I don't know if Commissioner Jackson, something happens in Detroit and then they want to get on our police officers. It's like, we're doing the things the right way. And we have advocacy groups that will come on. And I also love us being able to do things virtually because we get more participation from community. That's another thing too, Doc, is just an opportunity to really educate community on how the department works. Everybody has a thought process on what the department is supposed to do and how it's supposed to function, but being able to show more of how these commission bodies, how the Department of Police Accountability, how all of it actually works and what it's truly meant to do, I think can really elevate and help our communities, across the state.
This has been absolutely marvelous. A snapshot of how two departments are working hard for accountability and reform in policing. A snapshot at this moment in time. I personally, as one who has a lot of skin in the game when it comes to both young people and policing, because that's why I got on the commission in the first place, because of the encounters that our young people have with police. Just thoroughly, just wonderful leadership, the stick-to-itiveness and the innovation. When I hear things, obviously, like bringing in different people, mental health. I know at one time the department signed a MOU with the Department of Mental Health to bring people in who were in crisis instead of having them deal with officers, and because there's all of this. Just your continuing thought process of how to make this better is just, it's wonderful. And I said what did I say early, that the good officers can't seem to do anything about the bad ones. Well, the good men and women are gonna make this one work because we have to. Lady E, you've heard the whole thing. Let me get your thoughts on this. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, Dr. Marshall. And I'd like to say good evening to everybody. First, I want to acknowledge DJ and Regina, Ms. Jackson, Mr. Brookter, and Ms. Jackson. How much I have enjoyed listening to you and hearing your wisdom, your insight, and your passion for the work that you do, the people that you protect, look after, and take care of. And I really appreciate and have enjoyed your wisdom, your knowledge, your expertise. To Chief Armstrong, I want you to know I watched you when your statement, when you were given this position, your authentic, open-hearted, heartfelt statement when you were assigned this role. And it just made me feel like Oakland is in better hands. And I said it that way. Yes, I did. I'm one of those who'll say it. Born and bred in Oakland, yes. And so I could feel that. And hearing you talk about everything that you shared and what needs to be done and the one step further that's happening with the little bit that you've got to work with. Oh my goodness sakes. That's like Rumpelstiltskin trying to make some gold out of straw. Baby. Oh my goodness sakes. And you've got a plan and you work in that plan to make that happen. And so I just need to acknowledge and let you know that I really appreciate that and see that and hear that and pay attention to. Every now and then, Oakland has those spurts, but for the most part, it's not as scary as it used to be. And you've only been there for a minute, but it feels like change is definitely on the way. And Chief Scott, you know how much I appreciate, I'm going to say this because this is what I do, love and appreciate you. First, I want to acknowledge your wife, who's my soror. And if your daughter, Ariel, is she the one that you're talking about that did the work?
Yes, lady.
Okay,
Yes.
this was also my soror. I just need to say that because I know they're watching and listening, so I want to acknowledge my soror. And just to love and appreciate you and the hard work that you're doing, because when you came in at a tough time. And the rise and fall of the work that you've had to do and the things that you've encountered has been challenging and remarkable. I need you to know, because your wife is my soror and I feel like I know you. I pray for you regularly. This is not easy. It's not easy. And I need to say to both of you that when I am driving down the street and I see a police car, you know, I start to pray. It's important to me that when the police pull up behind me, that I feel like I am safe and protected. I haven't always felt that way, but I feel like that day is getting closer. In San Francisco, it's definitely, I feel more safe than I do questionable. Okay, and so I just want to just celebrate you and the work you're doing and keep up the good work. What I've heard you say tonight, both of you, makes me feel like these places where we live and trust and believe and hope that we're going to be protected and not limited, impacted in a negative way because of the color of our skin, gives me hope. You've said a lot of things, and I hope that the listeners hear the work that you're doing to make sure that policemen are accountable. They are watched and supervised, and they are being taught with reasons, giving, this is the reason you must do this. It's important, and it feels good. And so I hope our listeners feel good about what you've shared. Dr. Marshall, I know that policing is a passion for you. The work you've done on that commission, you know, I watched you. I was there when you got sworn in.
That's right.
And the work that you continue to do and believe in and support. It's not easy building bridges when people feel like we can't trust them, and you point out that trust is possible. And I appreciate that. DJ, I want to just acknowledge the fact that it's wonderful when somebody looks at you and says, I think if there's anybody that could do it, it's you. That speaks a lot to you. So for each of you, I pray for you and your work. Ms. Jackson, I saw what your organization went through. And I saw this little woman, tough lady, walking through, looking at and saying, this is what needs to be done. Oh my goodness, you represent us well. So I celebrate you. And I pray that you continue the work that you're doing to make the communities, the young people know that they're cared for. Young people know that they're safe. Old people know they don't have to worry when the police pull up, and you keep doing the work to make this country, this city, this state, our people, all people safe. Thank you, Dr. Marshall.
Let us all say amen. That's what that sounded like from Lady E. Thank you, all of you. Thank you for this time. We'll do it again. We'll stay in touch. We'll keep our eyes on the prize, and we know what that is. Love all of you. So let me just say good night to all of you, and thank you so much. Okay.
Thank you. Good night, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Good night.